Okay, everybody ready? If we can stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, Ms. Bissett, would you like to do a roll call, please?
Mr. Salmonaro?
Here.
Mrs. Bissett here. Mrs. Hartzell? Here. Mr. McCullough?
Here.
Mr. Potts?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Mr. Shaheen?
Here.
Mr. Twardowski? Here. And Mr. Basil?
Here. Okay, first I want to thank the administration for coming tonight. We appreciate it. I'm not sure if we get to everything, but we appreciate the fact you guys are here and able and ready to answer some of the questions the board may have. Having said that, I think the first thing I want to do is sort of just review the updated list of reductions and adjustments to the budget so we get a sense of where we are with our deficit, and then we can start talking about the different subcategories of our budget that the administrators represent, and I'm going to give the board an opportunity to ask them some questions on it.
Because we got this much over the last 2 days, if
Yeah.
you talk to a particular sheet, can you let us know what sheet you're talking to?
So obviously the board can drive this conversation too.
Well, that's what I mean. You're
Yeah.
going to be talking about the deductions and puts and takes. I'd like to know what sheet we're looking
Yep,
at. Because
so the first,
Mr. Basil, can I interrupt for a second and just remind you that we are recording this?
right, we are recording this, so everyone's aware of that for the record. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so the first thing I was going to look at and have Danielle address is the updated list of reductions. It's starting sort of at the top. That's the first sheet in the spreadsheet she had sent out. This was previously a confidential working document that the board was working with, and now we'll take it public and go through these lists.
Are you
Everybody on the same
referring
page?
it's the first
to
one. like I thought.
First
red,
one,
green,
yes.
yellow?
Red, green, yellow, right. I figured there's a bunch of those things up at the top that were more administrative in nature, which really aren't going to be subject to any kind of board discussion.
Right.
We can clarify. what
I
those
think though,
things are.
before we start talking cuts, we need to go through all the budgets so that we know whether,
Yeah, I mean,
You
I
want to
do.
go through the individual budgets?
Yeah, I
first?
agree. I wouldn't go through the red, green, yellow sheets first. Let's go through the individual budgets because
we need to have an understanding of the budget, and where the increases are.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go into
Identify.
the individual suggestions that were made by the administration last January to the public. I was going to kind of wait till after we go into the individual budget, but I thought just to start, where are we in terms of where we were with a $53 million budget, and back in January we were at a $6-point-something million deficit due to some of the adjustments in half-day kindergarten or reduction in the healthcare estimate, the transportation contract calculation, things of that nature that really administrative, from a board perspective, there's really no discussion or debate on those things, but it's just fine-tuning our original estimates and see where that leaves us, and then we sort of roll into the next individual budgets for the different administrators. If nobody has an issue with that, I'll let Daniel get started. So, Daniel, you want to start off? We start off with a $53.8 million budget, and you want to just roll through this list to start here: increase in diesel fuel price, unemployment compensation, what those line items are for the benefit of the public as well, and what those adjustments were and why those happened real quick. It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes.
Okay, originally the proposed expenditures, this is prior to the preliminary budget, was, like Mr. Basil said, approximately $53.8 million. Through refining and whatnot of the budget, new numbers came in for diesel fuel, which has increased those expenditures by $40,000. We have entered an increase for unemployment compensation costs based on what may occur throughout the cut process. That's $100,000. We have an increase for the employees who, some employees waived their health care. That hadn't been budgeted, and the administration felt that needed to be in there because it's $170,500 to put an increase in there due to an arbitration decision that just came about, I think it was last month. So that increased the expenditures by about $14,000. High Point Academy Transportation, they transport some of our students and we have to reimburse them. All right, where was I?
High Point Academy.
All right, High Point is an increase of $35,000 for transportation. We then had a reduction in transportation costs due to the CPI index was less than we thought, so we went with our minimum increase in the contract, so that decreased expenditures by approximately $44,000. Reduction in our health care rate from where we originally proposed is now at a 2% increase, so that was actually a reduction of $253,000. Half-day kindergarten, which is the furloughing of 7 teachers, is a $432,000 reduction. Reduction in our member share of the Berks Career and Technical budget is a $20,000 decrease. The reduction of our special needs share from the BCTC is a $65,000 decrease. The reduction of debt service share for BCTC is a decrease of $1,000. There was a transportation revised calculation which actually resulted in a $407,000 reduction. There was the reduction of 2 buses that has been announced from the Transportation Committee, which is approximately a decrease of $71,000. And there's a reduction for the contract for our fire security and monitoring services of approximately $24,000. And right now, that then brings our original $53.8 million in expenditures down to $52.9.
Thanks.
Can we go into the revenues?
Sure.
Okay, our proposed revenues were at the beginning of December, I guess you should say, is $46.9 million. As we had announced when the governor's proposed budget came out, there was a reduction. Actually, he is no longer funding charter schools, so that was a reduction of $176,000 in subsidy money. We did have an increase in our basic education funding of approximately $828,000. We had an increase in special education subsidy of approximately $13,000. There is a proposed increase in our Title I funding of approximately $47,000. Proposed increase in our transportation subsidy due to deeming some roads hazardous and being able to claim those pupils of approximately $40,000. And the middle school musical stage yearbook are going to be self-funded, so we added revenue to offset the expenditures, and the same with the high school yearbook. That's going to be self-funded, so I added the revenue. So our original revenues were $46.9 million, and with all those adjustments, they're now at $47.7 million, which brings our total deficit down to $5.2 million.
So essentially, our the adjustments in the expenses went down about $960,000. The adjustments in revenues went up $768,000. Net, we're still looking at a $5.2 million budget deficit. That's kind of our starting point. And from here, I think we can get started then with the individual budgets. Who would the board like to start with first? Any takers? Okay. All right, that's what we'll do. We'll start off with special education. Yeah, if you don't mind coming up, or
There's a mic.
there's a microphone at the podium.
Sit there.
Or you can go to the podium, whatever works for you. Okay, so the board, we've got, it's a spreadsheet regarding special education. Everyone should have that. They're all pretty much the same formats. Everybody have theirs up? Okay, so,
You'll have to tell me which one you're looking at.
Yeah, me too.
One that was emailed to us.
The one that has the 2-year actuals?
The one that was emailed before 18.
Yes.
what's that?
The one that was emailed to us for 18.
Right. One that was emailed to us yesterday.
Oh my God, I just gotta find it.
I guess, for me, I'm just kind of curious if you could explain the variance between sort of what your actual costs are going to be for this year and prior years versus what you're proposing in your budget for
Why the
2011,
increase in
12.
the different categories?
Yeah, I mean, well, particularly, yeah, there's
Okay,
there's
well-
one particular category that's a significant jump in.
The 1,200, 300, is that the one?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Hey, could you just, for our benefit, what is 1,200 to 300?
That encompasses our cost as far as outside placements, our PT services, and OT through OSTLs, which is a good bit of money. Any services that we contract through the IU, such as the hearing that we have to provide, vision therapists, the orientation and mobility therapists that come to work with our students who are visually impaired. And again, it's right now, when I worked on that number, and I did not, you need to know there's no extra money as far as slots. This week alone, we placed 3 students in alternative education placements, which we have no additional money. Everything here is what it's going to cost for the current students who are in outside placements. And those costs, we incur either through, we've tried everything here in the district as far as providing the various supplemental services, aids. We moved classrooms. We always start in the least restrictive environment. Hopefully the students homeschool after we exhaust all those options, because either that student's learning has been impeded or the student is impeding the learning of others, or we just can't meet that student's needs. We need to seek outside placements, and that's not a choice of ours. That's what we're committed to as far as IDEA. In addition, if a student moves into our district and they're already in placement, that cost now becomes ours because we're the home district. We have a few of those, and those can be costly placements. 2 of the placements that occurred this week sort of blindsided me as the director, because what happens is there are students who are placed through the mental health agency, but we're not even involved. The parents have possibly taken them to the emergency room. They're placed in a residential placement for maybe a week, maybe 3 weeks, and then they step down, and I get a call from Kids Peace or a placement like that, and they say, "Oh, Shelley, we have an intake tomorrow." Oh, that's nice. It's not a choice of ours because the student's going into an acute placement. However, the cost eventually becomes ours because they go to subacute and start stepping down, and we're always responsible for the education. So, as I stated, what is built in there is just the slots, the outside placement slots for the current students that we have right now. So if we have a cost student who moves in over the summer, that's not included in that cost.
How many students do you have this year?
How many special education students total? Right now, we are servicing 528 students. Of those 528 students, we now have 41 students in placement, which is not a high number. So you can imagine the amount of money from my budget that's going to service just really a few students when you look at the number of special education students that we serve.
How many of that 41 was just this year or next year's increase? Like what was it 2 years ago?
19, we have 19 in
So
placement.
basically in 1 year you doubled the amount of kids for contractual services.
What's that?
In 1 year you doubled the amount that we have to contract outside the district?
Yes. Either through, again, we've exhausted options here, they moved in, or they were placed by an outside agency who had no choice. Some of the costs, although that number is high, some of those costs are shared with the state, where I'm able to do a 1040 form. So if that alternative ed placement, they have so many 1040 slots, which means it's a 60-40 split between the state and the district, but not all places have those slots, and not every place that has those slots, they're not available to every student. They're allotted a certain number. So for some of those students, especially the very costly ones, we could be looking And those are very unique needs for students who need a placement like that.
Question, is this number that you budgeted the 60% or 100% of what it costs?
Oh, I only budget what the cost is to me, to
60%.
us as a district. And that's not for all students, as I stated. Not everybody has 1040 slots.
There are schools in Pennsylvania that are called approved private schools that allow us to submit documentation that allows us to get back a certain amount of the tuition that the cost, placement costs. For example, if it costs $120,000 total, they'll split that with us on a 60-40 basis.
Exactly.
Now, in addition to that sort of like kickback from the state, each year I can go through and submit applications for contingency funds. And that's looking at our really costly students. And I do a huge application for each of those. And then the state, again, they have so much contingency fund money. Last year we were very fortunate. We received, I think, $138,000 back. But again, you don't know what you're going to get back. It depends how much of the pot they're willing to share with various districts.
Well, understand that you went from, you added 19 students. I would expect your budget to double and triple. You went, it goes somewhere around 700,000. You went to almost 1.1 million on that line item. Did we just get all the highest and most costly students within the district at one time?
No, but as I stated, that's our outside services as well.
But that would lead one to believe that you're going to be well over budget this year then. And it's not what it's tracking right now.
Right.
Right now you're tracking it at $283,000 through the end of March. And even if we were to say, let's take what you estimated the budget to be at $350,000, you doubled the number of students, 700, but not at 1.1 million.
And I think the other thing I noted was, when last time we went through this and I looked at enrollment for special education, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think last year was 516 students, the year before that was 541, the year before that 518, the year before that 527. And maybe things have changed, and I realize that special needs students have special needs, and therefore the dollars may not be the same, but nowhere in past budgets were we anywhere close to $1.1 million in professional services.
Again, I give the point that we doubled.
Yeah, but
So we doubled the budget.
even when we were at 541,
Yeah.
we were at $435,000 in costs. It wasn't a,
Well, not only that, it'd be for the next 3 months or the last 3 months, you're almost right on your budget for this year, yet you simply decided 3 more students.
And we put 19 in this year.
Correct.
and we're just trying to figure that,
Put yourself in
component
their
out.
shoes, that number jumps out at us really fast.
Right.
And do we use the
And I
IU
know
for
we
some of
looked
these
at-
services?
Go ahead.
Do we use the IU for some of these services?
We do.
And since then, I know they approved that there will be no increases.
So
So,
their services?
Correct.
yes, that was in the paper about a month
Correct.
ago, that they approved that there would be no increase in services to school districts to help districts out with their budget.
Well,
So
for
have you
instance, the
recalculated?
2010-2011 for per hour for vision itinerant is $104.
But it's
But-
level
but
from
even-
this year,
but
they're
even if-
maintaining the same rate. Did you put an increase in?
Did I?
Yeah, when you did your
No.
budget figures?
No.
But even if you put a 3% increase, it still wouldn't get you triple the amount. It still wouldn't be triple.
I'm assuming these out-of-district placements also have medical needs because of, so can you apply for access money for those?
We can, we
And you-
use access to the max as far as we can.
For out-of-district placements, do we,
We can't do tuition. It can only be related services. So.
but I'm sure they're providing in related services, like if they're an out-of-district placement for psychiatric services, there's got to be something that we can apply to access for.
We do. If in fact it's in the IEP as a related service and it's tied to an IEP. If there's a student who has a full-time nurse, we can recoup some of those funds. You never get 100% back through access.
I just want to make sure we're maximizing
Oh, we
everything
are.
we have.
Oh, we are.
I don't know, that number still just doesn't sound right for just doubling the number of students.
It seems about $300,000.
Yeah, and the question is, are there any other alternative, cheaper alternatives? Because it just, I mean, it's a $700,000 increase in spending for students. I mean, I just wonder if there's any other.
We use all of the alternative education placements that are available, that are local. We always look local first, and I do encourage parents that, because, you know, some of them just want to go right to Deborah. And I tell them, least restrictive environment is looking in our community and what we can do as far as closeness to the home.
What's the possibility of housing our own alternative education within the district? Outside the box again, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, if we're paying $450,000, $500,000 more for 19 students, you know, 2 staff members for 19 students, I mean, in a couple of aides, we got to be able to do that for less than $500,000 or $600,000.
Well, I know there were, years ago, looked at hosting our own alternative education within the district.
Right, and that's an expensive proposition because you have to have all core teachers certified in each of the 4 areas, along with a certain amount of guidance services. The state has really tied their hands in being able to get approval for an in-house model. It actually turns out to be more expensive unless you have, there's like a threshold of the number of students. And then if Mrs. Mikowski's kids would be put into the mix, the whole special ed certified population would also have to be part of the teaching staff.
And here's something that you need to do with that number. And if you look at that spreadsheet, why that number is so glaring. If you look down to my 1220 300s, there's nothing budgeted there because we decided to lump all of the outside placement up in 1200 300. So anybody who you see there's numbers from actual numbers from now in those bottom categories. You see what happened? So that's why that million is up there at the top, and it's so glaring and it's so different from those other numbers, because now we took all of the 300s and we moved them up to 1200 300. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I see what you did there, and I was looking at that earlier.
So that's
But
why that.
even if you take that out, I mean, you're at 1.1 million, if you take that out, you're at $900,000. I keep looking at the historical costs and the number of students that we served, and even when we had 541 special needs students, our costs were like $435,000. So I don't know how we have 528 and it's going to cost us $900,000. It just doesn't seem to work.
It's the additional placements from, because if you look at those other numbers, there's 300s in each category, and each category stands for a different disability. So to put all of the money together, everything's now in 1200 300.
No, I see that, and I'm taking that into account. So even if I was going to break that out, and I was going to take $200,000 out of the 1200 300 and put it down to 1220 300, you know, what we're budgeting for next year then is like $900,000 for the 1200 300.
And again, that's placement that I just talked about. That also now includes in my original budget spreadsheet, there's a 330, which is contracted services through the IU. That's now in that 1200 300. So that's an additional cost there.
Yeah, but with the spreadsheet we have rolls everything up into 300. So
Right, but the breakout, it looks like those are all placements, but they're not all placements, because there's, in addition to contracted services that were elsewhere, and now make that category look like it's so large.
Well, did the historical actuals get rolled up as well? Am I looking at?
yes, yeah.
So it's rolled up in here, we're still seeing a big jump. We're looking at the historical actuals that were rolled up in the 1200 300.
Right.
I mean, I'm looking at your 1230s, and I'm looking at the 300s and the subcategories.
And there's another category, the 1270 500s. That's a huge jump too. Can you explain that? What that code is? 170-500?
I think
That
what-
is.
That, Margaret, if you take a look at that, I can probably explain this pretty simply. The net, you'll see that like the 1,200, 700 isn't taken into consideration, that it's almost like that number's been rolled up into the number above it. And, no?
It's its own number.
Oh,
Yeah, but we're still
That's
going
the
from,
two medically involved students.
The what?
That's
I'm
the
sorry?
multi-disabilities category, and so that's,
I didn't hear what you said.
that's the medically involved students. So that, one of the costs incurred there is full-time RN.
we're still going from a budget in 2011 of 5.5, a year-to-date of 3.9, projected finish of 5.7 to 6.3. Right, so we're still looking at the very bottom of the grand total, we're still looking to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 to $800,000 over prior year in the budgeting process.
And almost half a million more than we're expecting to spend this year.
Right.
I think, oh, I'm sorry.
Get back to the medically involved student, that's one student, two students, and it's a net increase of 150,000 for two
One of them
students?
is a residential placement.
And they're not up above in that other, are they
No.
part of those 41 students then?
Not
They're out of
not
district
the
placements?
services, not the residential piece and the nurse.
No, when you said the 41 in placements and 19 are new students, the 41, are those two included in that
The
41?
tuition is,
Now, are we tapping access then for that,
yeah,
the 500?
yeah. Yeah,
And how much do we get back from access for that then?
and I think like 58% of what we submit.
And is that calculated in what we're getting back from them? Is the access money
On the revenue
offsetting
side,
it
on the revenue side.
Is it?
There's $300,000 in access on the revenue side
for these two students?
for access, period.
For a variety of services involved.
Are we allowed to budget access?
No,
If they're medical, she said because they're,
Because it's a prior year,
sure.
we can't budget new anticipated ones.
So that's projected. It's not right.
Just like there was an issue about budgeting access money.
about 7,500.
So you do this to this.
And they're two new students this next year? Because this year, and you're only,
One of the students was here both students were here. The one student who moved to a placement setting, that placement.
because you're not even going to meet your budget this year, which was 49,000, but yet next year it's going up to 209.
Again, this is, we keep, numbers keep moving from 12,100 down to 12,3,800, whatever. I still got to look at the bottom line. The bottom line is that this year's budget is at $5.5 million. We're spending 3.9 as of the end of the third quarter, the first quarter of this year. And we're looking to do almost $2 million in the last 3 months of the school year. And then we're going up from there by about another $500,000 on top of that. You follow me on that one?
He's basically saying that even if you go to actual, if it's 5.8, it's jumping to 6.3 next year. That's a 10% increase.
And in 3 months, by the end of June, we're looking to spend another $1.8 million off what we spent through the end of March.
Is that possible?
That's when all the bills.
Yeah, you have
That's just all the bills.
salaries, benefits, and all her bills. That's salaries and everything. I mean, you still have it.
But again,
$1.8 million worth of salaries and benefits.
And bills.
but what we're saying, yeah, it's about right.
Yeah.
It's not right for last quarter. But
Okay, but let's give her that. Let's give that's it. We're gonna end up with $5.8 million. But then we have to go up another $500,000 in the budget. And almost $1 million on the top line.
What is the top one?
What is,
Well, I don't know what number you're looking
1,200, 100.
at. That's when you're
That's
talking
salaries.
bottom line.
That's
what is
salaries.
this bottom line here?
That's
1,200,
professional
100
salaries, professional salaries.
She's saying that as of March, you're here, yet you're gonna be $2 million higher by this time.
So we're $1 million in salaries.
See, this, hang on, it's not the number she's got.
No, you're not. Not in the 1,200, 100s. You're going up 0.42%.
I don't care about the budget, we're in the work.
When I look at the bottom line, I
Actual
ran through it right
3.3,
now. That's what I budgeted. That came in, and when I went through and did my estimates, I guess you added the salaries in there. But
Why?
see, that's my cost, that's what it is
Well,
on
you don't
top
want to
of
see your budget's
salary.
another $200,000 higher than that sheet.
No, this is where I'm ending. You have ending there. And now, this is just program, that's salary and benefits.
Okay, but then
That's
you're at,
next year.
yeah, but you're at 6.5 on this one, we're at 6.3 on this.
Yeah, do you see that? See the question, leave the question of why it go from, even if you go from actual this year, a 5.8, it's jumping to 6.3.
Right there.
And that's what our question is.
You're
why
going,
is
yeah,
it
you're
10%?
going from 4.9 to 6.4, you're still $1.5 million high year over year.
Right.
And we're just trying to understand where that $1.5 million to $2 million is coming from. We understand that you got 19 kids in the district that need to be placed,
Right.
but it can't be
Or going-
$1.5 million.
Right. And
That's the
again,
question.
right, and again, the services in, we're contracting now with Ostos for both OT and PT. So that's a large cost as well. And I could get that, I could give you that breakdown. as far
I'd like to
as
see
what
the
that
walk
cost
to 1.5. I'd really like to see where that 1.5 walk to.
Is it possible to hire someone to do that instead of using outside services?
is. We looked and,
Because it would seem to me it would have to be cheaper.
well, as far as OT, you couldn't have just one person. We have so many students, you couldn't have one person. So we would either need to hire two or one and two OT assistants. So then, your costs begin to rise because then you're talking about benefits, where when you're contracting, you don't have that responsibility. And as far as PT, we have 3 PTs who service our district, not on a full-time basis, but that's who's contracted through Ostos. So, but their numbers are well over one full-time person, because we have so many students who need services. But again, it would be difficult to hire even 1.5 to do that, because having those 3, some of the students' times overlap, because you couldn't possibly fit all the students in a week to hire that. And then we ran into, so if you hire an OT, where do they fit into the scheme of a contract? No one in Berks County did that, because I researched to say, where do you put them? Do you put them on teacher contract? Because they're not teacher they don't have a certification. So, where would we put them if we hired them?
There are
They
not many
hire
school
them.
districts, especially of our size, who hire OTs and PTs. Even when I was at North Penn with a $50 million plus special ed budget, it wasn't cost effective for us to even hire OTs and PTs. Just for the reasons she just explained.
And I think the line
I
items,
have a
I have a
question.
question, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
This sheet, which was the sheet that came out on Friday,
Mhm.
has a special ed department. And then we have the sheet that came out yesterday. And the numbers, is there more in that one sheet than in the other? Because they're not the same. So can
Our
you
numbers
explain
here
to
don't
me the
match her
difference?
sheet.
Right.
Because my
Like,
sheet does
what's the
not have the
difference?
salaries and benefits, the one that I did.
Which is
I just
what
did the
line?
cost
No,
of
this
mine.
has salaries and
Salaries and benefits
benefits
are
too.
shaded at the top.
Yeah, I'm looking
But
at
not
the
on the
1,200, 100 salaries.
1,200, 100,
On the one.
Because, Margaret, the one that you have that says 1,200, 100, and that's it, that's this entire 1,200, 100, the 12, all those rolled up into one.
Right.
Okay,
No. Because I'm going to just take this little component here, special ed, it has the 1,200, 100 salaries, then it has the 1,200, 200 employee benefits. And the same codes are on this sheet, and the numbers aren't the same.
No, they're not.
Example, salaries, 1,200, 100 salaries. For the budget this year has 3.1. On this sheet that came separate,
2.9.
2.9. Then the preliminary budget for this year has 3.1, and this one has 2.9. There's a difference of $2 million there. I don't understand, does the master sheet, I'm going to refer to it as the master sheet, have other categories in it?
Do you have the 21,100s in there?
No, it's all the 1200s.
But Andrew, if we take the 1200s
Yeah,
on
look at the
this sheet
1200s.
here,
Yeah.
it comes to 5.506. We do the same things here, and it's 6.19. The master sheet.
The master sheet's off.
Yeah, well, either the master sheet's off
Or
or this
this
sheet's
is
off.
sheet, but there's a big variance between the two, so which is the one that's the budget?
It's $500,000. That's 600, yeah, about $500,000.
Part of it, well, how part of it, the $500,000 might be that the actual is, looked at the 12,300, the one that came out yesterday, says it's gonna be 3.3 million, but we're only budgeting 2.9 for next year. So we're budgeting less. Why are we budgeting less if we know the salaries are ready? We haven't
This
cut,
is, well,
right?
which one's the official document?
I don't know.
Right. And
Is
the
it
master
master?
sheet is what
This-
is our preliminary budget. Those are the numbers that made up that, which is the 5.2 deficit. I think we need to
I think we need to put this.
figure out what's and what. Like example, where would the 1220 300s from the sheet that came out yesterday?
They would be in the 1200 300s.
I think all those said.
But then the special ed sheet that came out yesterday, the top part of that
There's 12,100
is
to
the summary of what follows below that?
No. There's 1200s that she has, that's a plain number, and then there's like 1220s, 1230s, 1270s, whatever. This master sheet is the sum of all that.
But still, at the bottom of that master sheet, it comes to 6.276, and at the bottom of this sheet, it's 6.1. It's still $100,000.
Because you have 2100s included in this other sheet, not just the 1200s.
Where's 2,100s go?
2100s go to 2100,
Okay.
part of that budget. It's not the whole budget, it's part of it. That's why, when this sheet came out and then more detail was requested, I knew there was going to be a problem because it's not going to match up because of the way you have to do it with the detail.
I don't know.
So you're saying that off the master sheet,
The numbers.
Everything's rolled up. When we did these special budgets, like Shelley, she has 1200, she has 2100s. If you look at the bottom line of her budget, it's not going to be the 1200s or the 2100s. It's a combination.
so the 2110 100 and 2140 100, those are all being
Rolled up into
out
the 2100.
into the 2100s. So if I'm going to this and I'm looking at the 2100s, and I'm looking at salaries, 21,100 pupil services, that's bundled in with these, are there other 21,100s that are out there somewhere? So there's other people
Yes,
fitting
that
into?
she's not responsible for. There's 2160, which I think is guidance.
Right.
There's 2120s, which are psych, I think.
Guidance and cycle.
So that's what I mean. Her budget's not, it's not going to match because it doesn't have all of
The
them.
master sheet that you had, Margaret, is,
Right.
it's got pieces
And
of everybody's
there's like-
budget rolled into that
There's
thing.
1200, 1243, which are gifted, which Shelley's not responsible for, which has salaries, which is why your 1200 on this sheet's not adding up. It's not going to because that's not her budget. So that was the problem. To present you with what the budget is, this master sheet is a summary. Then you wanted all the departments, it's not going to tie.
Okay, then
Okay,
can we then say, and maybe it's, I'm playing with code numbers again, if I have 1200-300,
Yes.
and then the 1220-300, and the 1230-300, and the 1270-300 all seem to go together?
On this sheet, plus other 1200s, that's
But I'm
not on
saying on her
Shelley.
sheet though.
No, they're all separate.
No, he's saying is they're all this,
But I understand on her sheet that 1220-300 on this, as Margaret's coined it, master sheet. Forget that. If I take this sheet here and I go 1220-300 here, and I do the 1220-300 and the 1230-300 and the
Right.
1270-300, they're all related expenses, right? That -300 is a...
The 300s are contracted services.
okay.
So
For
her
all the
contracted
different-
services are going up at a rate of 20% in one area. It's going up 200, and it's going up 202.78% in another area.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Then her 500s, it's going up 27% in one area, it's going up 233% in another area. Okay, we went down 100,000 in another area. It just seemed, and 326% in another area. All we're trying to do, and I'm asking for a walk to those. I understand we bring 19 new students in, 19 new special needs students that need outside placement. It just seems that, we double our number and we tripled, in some cases quadrupled, the amount that's in the budget.
Right, and I think if you work the spreadsheet, you will see that it's the 1,200, 300 category, the 1,200, 500 category, right there is almost a $900,000 increase right there in just those two line items. And as you roll down, you got another $180,000 in the 1,270, 500.
I don't see, I understand we're moving numbers, I just see an awful lot of increases well above current year projection and
historical costs.
and historical costs, and a historical cost per student.
Yeah.
And I think at this time, when we're asking everybody to go back, I think we need to have that relooked at and walk back to where that is. If you want to make it student X cost us $50,000, and student Y is costing us, I think we need to get into that granular amount of detail on a budget that went up $1.5 million.
My biggest concern is,
Is there anything that can be, that's really old world.
I think the concern I have is I don't care what category it's in. I mean, no disrespect where it is. Again, I look at the total. If she's coming in at 5.8 and now it's going at 6.3, I want to know what that $500,000 increase is. I don't care where it is. I don't care what category. If she's combining them, separating them, I don't really care. I need to know why that budget, not hers, but special ed, went up $500,000. Again, that's my question to her and to Ever, is just tell me why that went up $500,000.
Should we maybe ask the administration to come back to us with some kind of like a
Well, sure.
paragraph
I mean,
explaining
that's
that this
bottom
is going
line.
up because, and
An explanation.
because to me that would make sense, to try to put it in simple terms. It might be that there's 19 additional students that cost that much.
Well, that's why I said, let's
there's
walk those
possible,
19
but
students
find
back,
out.
what their cost is, let's
Right.
identify it.
Yeah, if
And
there's
I
any
look
way.
at that category, Daniel and Dr. Adams, you can help me remember. There were some regular education, alternative education placements that we rolled all into my budget,
No,
that cost.
they're in Anne Marie's budget.
They're in another budget.
The regular ed
Regular ed's
placements
in
are
another
in.
budget. Can't
Yeah.
code them at 1,200.
I just know by looking at what other districts are doing, they're all looking at their out-of-district placements and trying to bring back what they can. And it seems we're doing the reverse. And, if it's justified, that's one thing, but I need to know that it's justified because it's a huge increase. It's the largest increase in our budget.
Well, again, the justification is the 19 students that have been brought back in the district. So let's walk those costs for those individual 19s. We don't need to know names, but student X went, and this is that cost. Student Y, this was their cost. And let's walk it and see if it walks back to the budget.
I'm still trying to figure, even if you walk it back to the budget.
Then we got to justify why, but
Well,
let's walk it back so we know.
The next step then is, okay, even if you're 528 students with 19 new ones, whatever the case may be, these numbers don't line up, and we had 541 students we were
But
considering.
how, I guess you have to look at how many
But that's
placements we had during that.
I know, I'm just saying,
I know.
I'm
I
looking at
know what
the
you're
numbers,
saying.
and it just doesn't seem to make sense. How do you have more students 2 years ago, and we got less now, and it's costing us 3 times as much? That's, I'm having a hard
It's
time
not the
reconciling
It's
that.
not the cost we're incurring for the students who were educated here. It's the cost, it wouldn't matter if we had 600 students here. It's the cost for the students who are leaving the district
Yeah.
and being educated elsewhere.
I-
And I can do that. I can go through, again, as you know, I walk a fine line with confidentiality. And I do.
We
hold
don't
that
want
to the
names.
board.
We don't want
We
names.
don't
Right.
need.
I understand that, so I'll go through, and I'll go through the placements, I'll give you what the cost is for the tuition, if the student at that placement has a one-on-one aid, again, that's additional cost for the placement, that's not included in the tuition. Not all placements include the related services. So I should be able to have that to you next week, I'll go through each of the students, what the cost is for the district, and we'll see what the bottom line is as far as that. In addition, as far as contracted services, Those are an hourly rate from the IU. So I'll have to go back to the IEP and find out, how many hours were in that student's IEP to give revision service to the IU. And the same with an O&M service and hearing.
Can you, when you're doing that, and you're already in there, can you do this year and next, and the budget year?
Can I what?
Can you compare this year to the budget year, to the budget? Meaning,
From last year, what I
no, I'm
did.
talking about this current budget year,
Right.
and then show us what you're budgeting into the next year.
In other words, the student A costs 20,000 this year. Same student A is cost 25, 30, 40. What's next year? Go through A through whatever it is, and tell us what it is, and then add the new ones, K through whatever, S. Whatever.
Give me till at least Monday.
Maybe Tuesday.
We're meeting.
So I'll take care of that. Any other questions for special education?
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, we appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And I will definitely take care of that and get that to Dr. Otto so he can share that information with you. Okay?
At the end of the day, we just need to look at the lump sum, so. You guys want to talk about facilities next, is that easier?
Which one?
Facilities? Mr. Smith,
Is that operation and maintenance?
Yes.
operations, right. Everyone got the right spreadsheet?
Before we get started, can you identify the 100s, 200s, what those numbers are for us?
100s are salaries, 200s are benefits.
Okay, thank you.
I think like, 600s are general supplies.
It's on the master. The code.
Okay, I'm sorry. Your master's not right, though, so
Yes, it is.
not for this.
Kenny's will match because he's only the 2600, so his will match the master.
Check that.
What sheet are you on?
Look at Kenny's sheet matches.
They're the same. The sheets are the same, yes, you're fine.
Okay, so I guess the only question I have for you, Ken, actually I got two. So one is, under general supplies, looking at historical costs, they went up in 9-10, and then they seem to be consistent with 9-10 for this year, estimate to the end, 1.2 million to 1.2 million, and then next year you're budgeting for 1.3 million, so it's like another $150,000 increase. What's the rationale behind
Compressors, heat pumps?
compressors and the heat pumps?
Yes. We have over 400 heat pumps in this school district, about 50 rooftop units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember now from facilities that we would systematically be addressing those.
Yes. Yep.
Ken, your headcount maintaining for next budget year, or is it going down?
40 custodians now, 36 next year. Each custodian is responsible for 23,000 square feet per custodian.
The reason I asked that question is your budget basically remains the same.
Well, remember, this is what was submitted originally, and then we've
I-
got 3 custodians that have popped
Got
up
it.
since then, so.
Got it.
Yeah.
I'm asking him that's what we're still doing.
It will go down over the time. That's not reflected in the budget here. Okay.
Thank you.
What was your question, Yellow?
I just wanted to confirm that the retirements are still in your budget.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
It's got you working.
Can you just give us a little summary? I noticed last year's budget to this year's, where you're actually going to be, you're actually under budget. Where was the savings?
Basically, our head custodians, our maintenance people being resourceful. mean, we're just come back, we put a freeze on everything, and we put a freeze on except necessities.
It looks like the biggest savings was in general supplies.
General supplies, I mean, going through old heat pumps, taking the stuff off the heat pumps, using used parts over and over until they finally crap out.
Repairs and maintenance.
I have a question.
Yes.
The sheet we got, again, I'm referring to yesterday. Kenny's budget is supposed to be like, roughly, it's gonna run 4.4, but we're budgeting. But I think the savings is $300,000 for the budget, but the email we received today is on 185. What's the difference in that?
That's not just Kenny's, that's just my estimates. That means then there were other areas that went over, and he was helping out with the expenses.
Okay, but, so in other words, on this sheet, even though it's 300,000, his true net's only gonna be 185.
Well, not his true net, the overall district true net, for the difference between what the Peaser's rate was that we budgeted versus what it's actually coming in at, versus the other additional savings from freezing spending, Kenny's stuff, everything comes to that 185.
Well, wouldn't that be reflected in this sheet then, that you received yesterday?
No,
Why isn't that in this budget?
because it's not just his budget. You have to look at all the categories, all the expenditure categories. Just because his
But I
budget's
thought
coming,
that's what this was yesterday. I thought everything to do with operations and facilities is in this operations and maintenance.
right,
Okay?
but you're
so-
saying the bottom line number of what I'm saying, we're gonna wind up with expenditures for the year, that's every category, that's not just Kenny.
That might be like buildings.
It's the whole
It's the
district.
entire district budget.
It's the whole district.
But that's not what the email said, did it? The email said,
It said, I thought my
Okay,
uh,
okay, maybe I'm
projection
wrong.
and assumptions were that it was due to Kenny's savings as well as spending freezes and so on and so forth. What that
Okay.
tells me is there's other areas that were
okay, so I
over.
guess, I understand what you're saying, so I guess what I'm asking, so Mr. Smith though is looking at 300,000.
In his budget, but in the
Okay,
overall
okay,
grand
okay,
scheme
forget
of
that.
things.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now,
Yes.
and I apologize. So what I'm saying is, right now, Kenny's coming in about 300,000
That is correct.
less. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Which is great, by the way.
Yeah, it is, I'm not
You
curious.
need,
I'm
you
just
deserve a
asking
pat on the
question.
back for that,
No,
so.
it's the whole department, it's the custodians, it's the maintenance people,
But,
it's not just me.
but then I have a question, then why did you increase your budget? I mean, the budget's level, but actual the budget, the 300,000 is back in.
I think you're gonna see the
Because you gotta
variance.
figure this out in October, you know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
these numbers
Okay, but-
haven't changed, right, since October?
No,
Okay.
So then that 4.7 could actually get under,
Well, let's ask a
You're
question. Kenny, where do you think your budget actually is gonna be for next year? If we were
Correct.
saying, redo your budget right now. You had 121 for the custodian.
I can't tell you everything, I can only give you, basically what I do on my spreadsheet is my 400s,
Okay?
my, 600s and everything like that. Basically what I'm looking at right now is, just on mine is 1.9. Last year I budgeted 2 million.
The 1.9 is his 300s to 800s, not
Well, he's
including
you're
the
$1
ones
million
and twos.
down.
I wouldn't say $1 million down, it's 1.9 million versus 2.11.
2.0.
Yeah,
Budget 2.0.
so it's basically stays the same.
so I guess, again, the question should be, because he's running 300 less this year, should we over budget less for next year? If
But
he
he's
feels,
saying he anticipates next year being about $100,000 less.
okay, so then we should lower it again 200 now. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Is
We gotta watch what we do, I mean, eventually, we can only take so many pieces out of stuff that's
Okay,
broke,
that's what I mean.
you know what I mean? It's gonna come back and bite us.
Okay.
So your number's another 100,000 lower than we got here.
No,
No,
Did he just go from 1.9 to 2?
It's
From
in
2 to
this
1.9?
from last year,
From last year.
last year's
Basically,
budget to
Right.
11, 12.
correct.
question I asked is 2011 and 2012 budget, which he set in October, where does he think he'll end up if we said redo your budget right now? And you said the line items that you do, which were about $100,000 less, right?
Yes.
From 10-11, Kenny.
From 10-11, what
11-12.
I budgeted was $2,228,000. My 11 and 12 budget is $1.984284.
You're already budgeted less.
He is less. The
I am
increases
less.
are the salaries and the benefits for his budget. His actual, what he does is less.
I guess we're,
Plus, he still has some savings that I reflected that aren't on here that I read about the fire and security monitoring. That's not in here. His custodians aren't in here because that hasn't even really been discussed.
So, if I understand it, in the salary line item that's in this budget, this is before is it 3 retirements?
This is including 3, not the 4th.
So it's been reduced already by the 3?
This is the preliminary budget that reflected the 3,
Okay.
Not
So
the
there's a-
4.
not
why,
the 4th.
why is it flat over prior year then?
Well, you have, prior year, there was a lot of overtime. That has been curtailed.
Right.
So we don't need to budget for that, but you also have the custodians and the maintenance staff that have an increase projected in there.
No, no. We're at $1.8 million budget last year. We're at $1.8 million budget next year, okay? Whether, and that was budget, not actual, but budget. We're taking up 4 custodials, 3, taking up 4 head count, and we're still flat.
They're not out. The 4th person's not out.
Well, okay,
And-
3
and-
people then.
and-
I mean, maybe I'm being thick-headed on this, but I just look at a number that's $1.8 million last year, budget. You take 3 head counts out of that, and we're at $1.8 million again. Overtime or not? You're projecting more overtime next year?
No, we're not. We cut it in half.
But the salaries go up for the inflation.
Not
that's within the-
flat.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
not the
not
cost
3
of
head.
3 salary, 3 people.
Well, what kind of increase is in that budget? Is
Even
it
if it's-
4% or 3%?
Okay, but still, over,
And 3%?
I mean, take 3 head
$1.8 million
counts,
is
I mean,
what?
the 3 head counts we had was $121,000. We had $121,000 worth of benefits and salary, just salary increase on that line on 36 people?
I have a question. Did I hear correctly a little while ago that this, like you worked on your budget back in October? So has the budget been updated since then? Because now you have more accurate ideas of what your costs are going to be. And now we know the retirements. Have we updated it since October, or are these still October numbers?
These numbers are reflective of the preliminary budget,
Which was done in October.
which was done in
Well-
January, which was from the administrators in October. I can't change that number. That's the number that you're seeing here.
But
All
now
the
we can
changes
start
since
revising
then
it.
are
That's
what,
the whole budget.
that's what's on this sheet of all the adds and cuts and everything. They're the changes from
The red,
this.
yellow, green sheet is where we move from here. You know, adding in retirements and
And then I can show you every person.
There's got to be
how much
another,
overtime did you really cut back?
half of what they had.
Oh, more than that.
Again, I can't,
can
it's
show it to
simple
you
here,
on
I can't
paper if you
walk
need
these
to.
numbers, okay?
But your concern is with the salaries and benefits portion of the budget. Because if you're looking at the rest of the line items here, it
Yeah,
actually
right.
decreased
Yeah,
from
yeah, yeah.
But that's half,
actuals
that's half
9,
of,
10
that's
to
half of his
actuals this
budget.
year.
I mean, it's half his budget. If we've got $1.8 million budgeted this year, $1.8 million budgeted last year, $1.8 million roughly budgeted in 2010, in 9 and 10, and $1.8 million in 08, 09. And so 1.8 seems to be a common thread here. We take out, and you say you got 3 head out of that already, okay, which was $121,000, and less overtime, yet we're still flat.
121 was salaries and benefits. That wasn't strictly salaries.
Okay.
but still.
Can I ask
But
you a
then you
question
have
now?
increases of 36 people.
We're flat on this because this is the original projection. But what she said is if you go back to the updated list of reductions, you're showing a reduction of 169,000, which would come out of salaries and benefits, correct? For the
Correct.
4 retirements.
Correct.
So you would
Not
have to
all.
take that 1.8 and subtract,
No, you don't have to take the salaries out of there, not the benefits.
all right, salaries, sorry.
Right, but this, the
Three-fourths of-
preliminary was already reflective of 3 people out. You guys never really voted. The only thing you guys voted on was basic skills and kindergarten. So that 168 is now inclusive of 4 people, some of which is already out of here.
Okay.
I can't make the numbers walk, I'm sorry. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I can certainly show you everybody.
Yeah, no, I'm not doubting. I'm sitting
I mean,
here
I stick by that number.
as a guy
It's
that
as
sells,
solid as it can
and
be.
I put things together, and I said, here is a number that's sitting at 1.8, and we got 40 head. I take 3 head out, and I'm at 1.8. Okay, now I understand that you got 36 people you give a merit raise to. Okay, what's that
Merit
raise?
is
3%?
contractual.
Contractual raise.
Contract.
It's the same. Let's not quibble with terms here. Okay, if you take that number and you divide 36 into it, you know, at 1.83%, it should be $54,000. Okay. Okay, we're still, and I just can't believe, and then the number just doesn't walk all the way.
I have a question. In the 10-11
Walter, if you
budget,
take- if you
wait, in
take a
10-11
look-
budget, is overtime in there?
Yes, but it's in there at double what's in there for
So you budgeted for the
11,
10-11,
12.
which means if you would back that out, you'd be down to how much it was overtime that you budgeted for that year, this year.
I don't have that on the top of my
If you
head.
take
Okay, but even
estimated
if it's
actuals,
$100,000, then your budget,
4% for 11 and 12.
Okay, so we bump it to $60,000. We're still.
you're still not
Walter,
getting.
if you take-
You cut your overtime in half. We remove 3 head. We blow back in the 4%, and it doesn't walk back. And we're not trying to say take any money, but when we're looking at eliminate program, I just want to make sure that what we got here doesn't have an assumption that's incorrect, missed, or you got a set of spreadsheets. You got a set of spreadsheets. We got 2 spreadsheets, or actually 6 or 7 different numbers. I'm just trying, and that's the problem when we do this in April. Okay, just make sure we got something that makes sense. And it doesn't agree with my simple mathematical mind here. That I handle hers where you're talking about these numbers being in everybody else's budgets, and we said Kenny's budget's all by itself. Nobody else's numbers are near, and his numbers aren't anywhere else. So.
No disrespect, I don't know what to tell you. The number's solid, and I can show you every person that's attached to it. There's no assumption in there, other than all his people and our overtime.
so this
Maybe last year's.
1.03 million for budget 11-12 includes salaries
That's all I'm going to say. Maybe last year's.
for everyone less than 3 retirees plus a percentage of overtime.
I'm sorry, Andrew, I wasn't.
This 1.803744 in the budget for salaries,
Yes.
that is the 40 people less the 3 retirees plus some percentage for overtime.
That is correct.
Okay, so, Mr. Sheen, if you look at the estimated actuals for 10-11, it's $1.6 million.
Right.
It's like a 5% jump to 1.8 million. So if you take $3 million for, it's not a significant amount of money if you're taking into consideration a contractual salary increase and some percentage for overtime.
Yeah, but you're cutting
He
3
cut his
people.
overtime.
You're cutting 3 people out of there.
Cutting.
What's the total amount of dollars for 3 people? It's
$121,000.
$120,000 is less than 1%.
Yeah, but if you take your 1.6, subtract out the actual, subtract out 3 people and add the increase, you still come up to 1.8.
Not what I'm doing here with math. I mean, what are you doing with
The
your
salaries
numbers?
that come out are actually $60,000 worth of salaries.
Okay,
not
so we're at
120.
1.6. We'll round the numbers for the sake of math, and we don't need to get a calculator. We go from 1.653 to 1.6. Okay, 4% on 1.6 is what?
Who has it?
5% would be,
It's almost $100,000.
It's $100,000. So now you put that at 1.7.
yeah,
So how do we go up to 1.8?
and he chopped overtime.
And you chopped
And
over?
overtime was in that,
I think overtime in there, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a couple $100,000, I think, in there for last year.
I think it was 75,000.
That's what's in for 11,
But
12,
it's still
I
in
think.
there.
But it's still
And
in
we've
there.
maintained that.
We just kind of, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about
I don't know that it was
$200,000
actually
here,
in
right? I mean,
half.
that's what we're trying to reconcile, is $200,000. And
In or about that, yeah.
if that's being made up by an increase, a contractual increase in salaries, and then some number, $75,000, $100,000 in overtime, there's your $200,000.
No, what's 4% of 1.6?
$64,000.
So now you're back up to 6.6.
Yeah. So we're back up. So if we take out the retirees, add in the contract, we're back to $6.65 million, $6.66. Okay? So again, we're $140,000 off. This year's actual versus the budget number.
You understand what he did?
I didn't hear him.
Okay, he took the 1.653. He took off the few people at 60,000. He then turned around and put
1.6 million.
4% back on, which is 60,000 back, which gets you the 1.653. But next year they're budgeting 1.87. Where's the $140,000 increase? And it shouldn't be overtime because overtime was in both of them.
And
And he said
caught.
overtime won't be that high next year, or try not to be that high. So why is there a $140,000 increase? That's the simplest way to figure it out.
I don't know, my disposal stays the same.
No,
Well,
Kenny,
no,
it's
this has
not
nothing to
your
do with
stuff.
anything else besides
We're just
salary.
looking at the
It's
salary.
salary.
This is just salary, this has nothing to do
I
with
don't
you.
know.
So salaries are running lower than what was projected for the current year. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, just less overtime.
Well, you said
The
that, no.
estimated could be low.
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
I can't guarantee you that the estimated actuals are right. They're the best guess.
Well, again, if your estimated actuals are low, then we got an even bigger gap.
No, you
Okay,
don't.
I got you, okay. I see what you mean. Well, again,
So the
if,
estimated are lower because of the overtime.
if you're saying that in the 2011 and 2012 budget, you've already taken those 3 headcount out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And this is where I'm struggling with again. If you've taken them out of the 2010 and 2012 budget number, you budgeted 1.8 million. You take 121,000 out of that,
60.
only 60 out of that, okay? And you're adding the 64,000 back in, which is, again, you're breaking even.
He's
But
taking
even your
4%
half is gotta be
of
close.
1.6 million.
Yeah.
You only spent 1.27.
What the
5
contractual
by 3
increase.
multiplied by 4, you're still at 1.7.
Well, maybe that's something we need to look at again and clarify what the actual salaries are projected next year.
Honestly, I'd be more concerned if it was a different line item, but the salary line item Danielle has, it's so straightforward. I mean, she has the names of the people, she has the salary amounts, she has the calculations. She may not be able to articulate the whole thing right now, but
I don't have that.
she has every name accounted for. It's, move on to another item. She could probably answer this question for us tomorrow. Can we project any surplus for this year?
Yeah, he's looking at about 300,000.
About $300,000, yeah.
Most of that was in general, well, half of that was in general supplies. Which I think he said earlier, he expects to spend next year on heat pumps and everything else. So, I mean, I think if the question is, are there any additional savings that can be realized based on this year? You're telling us no, or we need to be careful cutting the budget
You need to
because.
be careful, I mean, unless you want to cram 60 kids in one room because there's no heat or air conditioning in a room.
Are we looking at, straighten me out on this, so we're not looking at, are we looking at capital expenses as well?
No.
For this
No.
budget, and none of that can get capitalized?
You know, if you're replacing a heat pump or something like that, that could be capitalized, but we don't have a heck of a lot of money sitting in our capital reserves right now.
Trying to balance how much of that we use.
And a lot of what Mr. Smith does with his operating budget is he takes care of a lot of capital expenses as part of his operating budget as we go along. I mean, I suppose you could say, okay, we'll reduce the operating budget by that percentage, but then fund the capital reserves. It's not going to net a savings for us. I mean, you're just going to allocate those monies to a capital reserve account and start funding your capital reserve balance by whatever that number is.
Can I just ask what 300 is for?
Contracted services.
So is that for,
Right now, that's Utilitech.
Utilitech, and it was for security.
thanks.
I mean, honestly, this budget's almost level funding. It's only
Yeah, I
an
don't-
increase of 33,000. I don't understand what the big,
I don't-
I mean, considering just the cost of living and everything that's going up, it's only a $33,000 increase. I mean, I think it's pretty lean as it is.
I gotta agree with what Frank said too. I mean, if she can verify the payroll, I don't know that it just seems to make sense to spend a whole lot more time on it. If she can verify that outside of here. And if something's wrong, we can talk about it next week.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith on this? Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Seeing as Mr. Legath is not here, you guys want to just, you can have that conversation in his absence, or we can wait until next week.
His budget down. His budget's
So
absolutely.
his budget's down, but because his budget, doesn't his budget reflect the
The middle,
25%
that
cuts
is
in
correct.
the middle school?
That's why it's down.
Now, I thought, and maybe we could have this for next week, I know originally there was discussion that as opposed to middle school sports being eliminated, we would look for the same dollar figure in other cuts. I don't know if we ever saw what those other cuts were.
We did talk about what Mr. Legath managed
Right.
to get in the
Remember, instead of eliminating middle school sports, we said, well,
He has
keep
a
middle
plan.
school sports, if you can come up with the same dollar figure to net that cut. We haven't gotten that yet, so maybe we can have that for next week. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking about.
And Danielle, are his numbers between the two sheets separate also? Are they mixed in build?
Yes, because his are the 3250s on the sheet. The other sheet is 3200s, which also encompasses 3210, which is your extracurricular, so they're not going to tie.
Okay.
Dr. Hodges just read in my ear that he went over what Mr. Legath,
His alternate plan.
his alternate plan was, but we can wait till Mr. Legath.
It's up to you.
Well, we haven't seen it. I mean,
I haven't put anything on paper yet, if you
Well,
want.
I'd like to see it on paper and
I'd
then
like to
him
see it
present
on
it to
paper.
us.
Okay.
I'm a visual.
All right.
We'll wait till next
We
week.
can make sure that becomes part of next week's material.
Okay, that leaves technology. So, Mr. Jacobs.
Hello.
It works.
Okay, technology, just a real quick rehash. Last year I came to you with a upgrade plan to go from Novell to Windows and the OS, to virtualize the servers, to SAN in the high school and middle school for disaster recovery. This year, when Dr. Otto came to me with a budget and we needed bare bones, I reduced that to about 32%, dropped down to around 397,000. Basically, what we're planning to do is just upgrade Novell NetWare to Novell SUSE Linux. Not recommended, but it made the system work. We also eliminated the purchase of the majority of the hardware, so we're no longer on the 1/5 upgrade plan, which saved around $250,000. documents, you have a breakdown of comparisons between previous years. Any questions you have? Try to answer them for you.
I guess my first, maybe you can just speak to it in a little bit general sense. You tend to spoiled us in the past with very detailed, building by building expenditures on personal computers, laptops, printers, software, licenses, and all that kind of stuff. Could you, in a nutshell, kind of summarize that here? Because all we see is code on here, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I have the sheet. In fact, I thought I had forwarded that to you guys way back when in the fall. I can certainly forward it to you, but most of the buildings have been cut to bare minimum. You have supplies, you have some contracts for different applications like WorldBook, Compass, training, stuff like that. Most of the cost in the budget is we're going to virtualize some servers. And what virtualization is going to do for us is allow us to put more operating systems on one hard box. It also gives us redundancy. For instance, right now our accounting server stands alone. If we virtualize it, we can put a copy of one on a couple of different servers. If the one server crashes, we just switch over to another. So it gives us disaster recovery. Most of our costs and the increases are in changing from NetWare to SUSE Linux. We also bought a new backup system this year, and the support costs for that are about $10,000. We have to upgrade our antivirus malware software, which is another about $7,000 there. We have a couple other costs that have come in. The time clock system, they will no longer support 5.0. They're forcing us up to 6.0, so that's $8,500. So basically, most of the cost is to pay for internet connections, for services, for support, and for the upgrade of the operating system. But I can certainly provide you with this. And it's a breakdown line by line of everything we're spending.
I guess the question I have, are we buying more machines too, as opposed to just servers? Are you going out and buying more laptops and desktops? And
No.
That's all been shelved.
Yeah, we took hiatus this year. We are not replacing anything, no laptops, no desktops. In fact, if we can move forward with virtualization, what we can do is get more years out of our legacy systems, our older systems, because you can virtualize desktops and basically run off a faster server. So I think as we go toward virtualization, we're going to actually be able to cut our hardware costs in the future. So this is a very bare bones step. The only thing I'm not too crazy about is staying with Novell. But I'll tell you, to switch to Microsoft, the CALs, the licensing is extremely expensive. That drives the budget way up. In fact, when I first created this budget, I was a bit around $593,000. And by cutting out that migration and the SANs, we were able to drop $195,000.
And that is reflected in the master document at this point?
Yes.
Correct. Hasn't been accepted, but
Well,
it's
in this
reflected.
document, right?
Correct.
But that's not in the preliminary plans that we're
Yes,
submitting.
it is.
That is in the preliminary plans
It
as
just
well.
hasn't been quote unquote accepted.
Gotcha. Okay. That was part of the original $2.8 million.
Correct.
request. Questions from Mr. Jacobs? Anyone? Silence is golden, I guess. There's no questions for him. Thank you.
Would you like a copy of this?
Yeah, if you have it, that'd be great. I appreciate it.
I'll email it to you.
Thanks. Okay. And just sort of summarize on that front. Obviously, special needs, we need to get a little bit more information. And Walter, you have some questions regarding the salary figures for facilities. So, get those moving on, I'm moving sort of back to the updated list of reductions.
By the way,
I'm
Mrs.
sorry.
Trainer gave us paperwork last
Oh.
night.
I'm sorry,
On
thank
her.
you for reminding me of that. Mrs. Trainer?
Can't be outdone by Mike. So, the paper I put together for you outlines a number of the budgets that I compile each year. And just as a little overview before you start, one of the things that I have always done is to make the assumption that there will be no grant money when you're doing a budget in October of the year previous to when you're going to be using your funds, because it's often late in the summer before I find out whether or not the grants that I wrote would bring in money. Typically for the last 4 or 5 years, I've brought in about $1 million in grants, and so most of the money that you see on the spreadsheet stayed in the budget and went back in your fund balance, because if I could spend from grants, I let my money sit, as long as it was something that could be charged back to the program. In the 100s, and it varied by year, probably the biggest expense was the mentor program.
Just one question. Are these actuals or are these budgets? The budget numbers that we're looking at? The spreadsheet you gave us, I mean, I'm looking at 8, 9, 9, 10.
They're budget figures that I put in the budget.
These are the budget numbers, but these aren't actual costs. For
No, they were the costs that whoever the business manager would have been put in for the year.
And you spent every penny of that, or?
I would say probably 85% of it stayed in the budget because I used the $1 million from grants.